have Nihad Awad, Director of the Council on American Islamic Relations. So please make some noise.
Assalamu alaikum. Good morning. Who we are? We are Muslims, Christians, Jews, people of faith and people of no faith, people from different backgrounds standing here in front of the White House to make a simple statement about a new visitor to the White House today. To make it simple, let me remind you, most of the attention today is focused on Afghanistan, on Taliban. What would Taliban do if it forms a government? Why am I bringing this example? Imagine if Taliban forms the government, continues to do what it was doing to the people of Afghanistan before they were defeated in 2001. And they became national and international leaders. And if the President of the United States, President Joe Biden, decides to host in the White House the leader of Taliban, what would be the reaction of the US media? What would be the reaction from the public? What would be the reaction of politicians by the fact that Joe Biden will be hosting the leader of Taliban? People will be up and roar. Today, it's no different. President Joe Biden is hosting the leader of the Israeli Taliban. Joe Biden is hosting the leader of a settler colonial movement in Israel. Joe Biden today is hosting the representative of a settler that's called Jacob. Jacob, if I remind you, is the same person who told Muna al-Kurd in Sheikh Jarrah that if I don't steal your house, someone else will steal it. Naftali Bennet, who's visiting the White House, is the spokesman for Jacob and hundreds of thousands of Israeli settlers in Palestinian homes. What would be the reaction of politicians who believe that human rights should be elevated? And I remind President Joe Biden today that he's breaking his promise to us and to the world, that he will honor and promote and defend human rights. Human rights will be on the top of his agenda. Today, that promise is out the door. That promise is under our feet. That promise is something of history. And that is shameful from the White House, from the leader who got the votes of Muslims, Christians and Jews and people of faith and no faith who believe in progressive values, who believe that justice is indivisible and justice for people here is no less than justice for people in Palestine. Joe Biden is breaking his promise to protect human rights of the Palestinian people. By welcoming Naftali Bennet today, he's sending a message to the world that Israel is an exception. Israel can abuse human rights because it has an agency on Capitol Hill that pours money in the pockets of candidates and congresspeople. And that's what matters. What matters is not that people are being killed and maimed and bombed and their houses are being destroyed on their heads by US-made weapons supplied to Israel. That doesn't matter. What matters is there is money pouring in the pockets of people like Joe Biden to become candidates and to maintain the status quo. And that is a shame. Shame on all of us to allow the status quo to continue. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to realize that pouring money into an occupation is similar to pouring money into an Afghanistan. We have spent $2 trillion on 2 wars in Iraq and in Afghanistan. 20 years later, we said, what did we do? We turned countries upside down, and we had a shameful exit. We have been doing the same thing to the Palestinians for 70 years and creating despair, refugees, and tragedies for families, including my family. I am a Palestinian. I am a refugee. I was born and raised in a refugee camp after my family was forced out in 1948 by the Israeli forces. And I'm gonna stand here every time I can to push against justifying the oppression and supplying Israel with protection the way this administration and previous administrations did. We're not going to go away. We're not going to be silent. One generation after another, we will not forget. And we have to hold our administrations and our politicians accountable. And let me just finally say this. A message to progressives in the United States. You are not a true progressive unless you defend the rights of the Palestinians. Unless you hold this administration and every Israeli apologist accountable. You are not progressive if you only care about human rights in the United States but turn a blind eye to what Israel is doing in our name with our weapons to the Palestinian people. You are not progressive if you vote for human rights in other countries except in Palestine. You are not progressive if you pay attention to every entity on earth except to the Israelis. Why? Because Israel is pouring money and their representatives and apologists are filling the pockets of you to replenish your campaigns and succeed in your political aims. That is something that needs to change in the United States. It is up to you and up to me. We will not give up. We should hold our elected officials accountable to make sure that justice is indivisible and the human rights of the Palestinians are no less important than the human rights of the Israelis, of the Americans, of every other nation on earth. Thank you.